Marvel, church, family. In that order. At least, according to these guys. Hello and welcome to the first and last video of me getting the chance to trash on Marvel. Publicly, that is. Now don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of films and TV, but I've grown up in a time where superhero movies have dominated the industry, which has sent me down a descending spiral of depression. Now I don't hate Marvel like I hate the Nazis, but I've become so bored by what they produce, I don't get why so many people love them. It's the same shit over and over. But I made this video as an attempt to sway my stand on Marvel. Consider this a therapy session for myself. So by the end of this video, it won't just be me who'll feel empty. Let's move on. Today we're going to be focusing on Phase 1 because there are so many movies that Marvel have released since its first feature in 2008, Iron Man. Now, this is going to surprise you, but I don't have many bad things to say about this one. It's well directed, well shot, has a great origin story, and Robert Downey Jr. is great as, well, Robert Downey Jr. Minus the criminal record, but we're not here to talk about that. So the film starts with Tony Stark as a typical playboy genius type billionaire who's captured by the Ten Rings. Yeah, let's go with 10 rings for now. Definitely not something else I was thinking of. Through the American work ethic of determination, persistent desire, we witness a foreign worker die and receive no credit for the creation of the Iron Man suit. So he escapes from the clutches of ISIS, the Ten Rings. He returns to America and begins making the suit to become the iconic hero that we know today. What I like about the first Iron Man is the character's arc. He changes from a kind of selfish and privileged dork to a selfish and privileged hero. Iron Man is opposed by his father's old company partner, Obadiah Stane. I don't know about you guys, although I found Jeff Bridges' portrayal of Obadiah quite entertaining, I felt he sometimes tried a little bit too hard, like he was going for an Oscar-worthy performance.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave! With a box of scraps!
Thank you, Academy member!
But on a serious note, his performance was quite good and conflicted with Tony Stark's character quite well, allowing him to grow and carry a bigger weight of responsibility. It's really a complicated father-son story, integrated with vaguely Middle Eastern terrorists. At the end of the film, Tony Stark reveals himself as Iron Man to the world, something that every other superhero don't have the nerve to do. During the post-credits scene, we are introduced to Nick Fury. This generated a lot of excitement about what was to come, but much like politicians during a campaign, the promises and expectations were bound to be let down. The Incredible Hulk is the second installment to the MCU, but not the first time a Hulk movie had been made. The big question was, could this version of Hulk surpass Ang Lee's masterpiece? The answer is yes. No, of course not. It could never be matched to the genius of Ang Lee. You can't beat Flying Hulk. In this version, however, you get to see both Hulk and Bruce Banner in their prime physical condition. Now the movie opens with a whole movie of its own in the intro, which isn't the best way to start. I think the story would have played out a lot better if we didn't know Bruce's backstory and we'd been trying to find clues in the film as to why he ended up in Brazil. But maybe I'm being a bit of a stick in the mud, because this movie's actually not as bad as people would have you think. Edward Norton obviously doesn't go on to play Bruce Banner in the MCU. His ambitions for the titular hero were quite interesting and the complete opposite of what you could think to be a typical Marvel blockbuster. But then again, it made sense why he didn't go on to play Hulk in the Avengers, since he wanted to make a film that was the same emotional drive as American History X.
Just the way I felt about American History X, I actually thought American History X was sort of like Othello or Macbeth. He had written this kind of edgy thing with the drug plot in it, and I was like, I think you strip all that away and you literally just make this about rage destroying a person who's got a lot in him. It's like a Shakespearean tragedy, but it's skinheads.
I guess I would relate to Hulk more if he was a neo-Nazi skinhead.
Motherfucker! You ever shoot my family?
The villain of the film is kind of boring and more of a pawn used for the final boss scene, which is kind of cool to watch, but you can tell it hasn't really aged well. Like I say, it's not bad, but it's pretty forgettable. Next is Iron Man 2, and the only way to describe this is
shocking. I am disgusted with it.
We are introduced to two villains this time, Justin Hammer and Whiplash. The casting of Sam Rockwell and Mickey Rourke were excellent. However, Their characters were not up to the potential. They never really seemed like a genuine threat to Tony, who by the way comes out of this film with very little development. In fact, he's somehow more unlikable. Marvel embraces its Americanisms and how they feel towards anyone with an accent.
You dig what I'm getting at here?
I don't know if you know this, but I don't speak Russian!
There's no real energy to this film, not enough memorable scenes, especially the final act. The Grand Prix scene in Monaco is probably the best scene, and at best an inferior homage to the pod race scene in Phantom Menace. Nick Fury and Black Widow are in this movie just because. This is my problem with Marvel. If you're gonna tease characters for the future, they've got to have a purpose when they're introduced, not just sit around eating donuts. The next film is Thor, a waste of potential that made me believe the gods really don't exist. Now, because Marvel's Thor is obviously inspired by Norse mythology, it would surely focus on tales of epic fantasy adventures, the scale of Lord of the Rings, right?
It's false. No way. Not this time.
I was expecting a grandiose spectacle of the Viking Age embedded with the Thunder God's numerous foes and adversaries. Where was Baldur, half-brother of Thor? Where were his servants, Thialfi and Roska? Where were the sea serpent Jormungandr?
Where was Gondor when the Westfold fell?
Although the visuals of Asgard are a spectacle to behold, they should have focused more on the mythology aspects rather than what turned out to be.
Oh my god, this is going on Facebook, smile.
There was an opportunity to explore the riches of Norse mythology, but no. The end of the universe must always be situated in America.
USA! USA!
And the characters on Earth are quite annoying. In fact, as soon as Thor is exiled to Earth, the tone completely changes to Marvel's notoriously obnoxious humour.
You're no match for the mighty!
All in all, the final act is once again stupid and felt more forced since we've wasted so much time developing Thor's arc around these so-called scientists.
You know, for a crazy homeless person, he's pretty cut.
Captain America, the first Avenger, the first hero, America's hero. And what better way to show how American you are by beating up a bunch of Nazis?
Holy mackerel.
Integrating superhero films with an event as shocking and disturbing as World War II is always going to be a challenge, so it made complete sense that this was rated PG-13. I'm being harsh, but do you really remember or care about this one? It's pretty dour and doesn't really gain much momentum, even towards the end. The Red Skull has always been a ridiculous villain. Once again, another great actor wasted by Marvel. They seem to know who to cast, but the writing doesn't do them any justice. So yeah, this one's not as bad as Thor, but still really, really dull. And yes, I wish they stuck with Captain America's original suit throughout the franchise. So now we have reached the final film of Phase 1. The ultimate and most groundbreaking film to redefine the genre. The action, the drama, the tension. It's all been building up from the past 4 movies. You simply can't go wrong with this.
So that was a fucking lie.
Marvel's The Avengers, or Avengers Assemble, depending on what country you're from, is the film that really got non-comic book lovers into the Marvel pyramid scheme. I mean, cinematic universe. I think Loki is one of the best characters in the MCU, to be honest. But it's a shame they make him such an idiot. Like, he didn't see a gun directly pointing at him. He's smart, but he's also dumb.
Are you dumb, stupid, or dumb?
Also, this movie is way too long. A lot of the story takes place on this airship and they're just complaining and talking. It gets quite tedious.
Thought humans were more evolved than this.
Excuse me, did we come to your planet? You were finished.
You understand
Oh, well, allow me to retort.
You could honestly skip a lot of the scenes in the Avengers. I would only highlight the fight in the forest, the fight between Hulk and Thor, and when Hulk smashes a giant robotic fish as the best scenes.
That's my secret, Cap. I'm always angry.
It's cool seeing the characters all coming together in one film, but if you want to see the good version of the Avengers, I would just watch Earth's Mightiest Hero, or the film with Sean Connery. So you've probably given this a massive dislike, and honestly I don't really blame you. But that's just my opinion of where I stand with Marvel. What can I say? I'm bitter towards other people's success. Thanks to the one person who managed to stick around to the end of the video. If you could like and subscribe, that would be great. Adios!